You know what's really wild, man? When someone like Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, one of the most powerful political figures in the world, steps up and makes a bold statement about Islam, it just catches everyone off guard. Because that's not something you hear often from people in that position, especially in such a direct or predictive way. Usually politicians play it safe when with her. It's about how unexpected it is to see someone from the top tiers of government stepping into that territory. Because Islam isn't just a religion. It's tied to identity, politics, world history, conflict, peace, and philosophy all at once. So when a figure like Kamala brings it up boldly, it's not just a soundbite. It's a statement that ripples through multiple communities, sparking discussions that politicians usually avoid. And that's why it's so fascinating, man, because it blurs that line between faith and power, between the spiritual and the political. And when someone that high up crosses that line, the whole world pays attention, whether they like it or not. You know what's crazy, man? The nature of Kamala Harris's prediction about Islam wasn't the usual polished, politically neutral type of statement you get from high-ranking officials. It wasn't one of those, when we respect all religions or unity through diversity kind of speeches. No. This one had weight, bae. In it, it had that tone of conviction, like she genuinely believed she was pointing towards something big on the horizon. That's what made it so wild, because when a person in her position says something that feels like more than politics, something that almost borders on a spiritual or historical observation, people feel it differently. It didn't sound like she was ticking a box for inclusivity. It sounded like she was making a forecast, like she was saying, Islam is about to play a bigger role in shaping the future, culturally, socially, maybe even politically, and that kind of statement hits hard in a world that's already hyper-aware of religion's influence on global dynamics. You could feel that she wasn't just reciting a script. There was this underlying confidence, a tone that said, watch what's coming, and that's what threw everyone off balance, because when someone at that level of power speaks with that kind of certainty, it makes people stop scrolling, stop arguing, and truly think, what does she know that the rest of us don't? What she's seeing in the world right now, the rise of faith conversations, the rejection of shallow materialism, the global hunger for meaning, that's making her say Islam's influence is about to expand. It's fascinating, man, because it wasn't just about religion. It was about timing. The world's going through this identity crisis, politically, culturally, spiritually, and people are searching for something real again, something grounded, something that feels unshakable in a chaotic age. Maybe that's what she was getting at. Maybe her prediction was less about politics and more about recognizing that faith, especially one as historically deep and disciplined as Islam, is reasserting itself in a modern world that's been spiritually starving. And that's what made it bold, because it's one thing to acknowledge Islam as one of the world's major religions. It's another to predict its future influence, especially when you're standing at the heart of a secular political system. That's not just commentary, that's risk. Because every word gets dissected, analysts will read into it, critics will twist it, and believers will react with emotion, pride, or skepticism. It puts her in this strange position of being both praised for her openness and criticized for overstepping the line between politics and prophecy. But man, you can't deny that there's something compelling about it. Because underneath all the noise, there's a truth there. Religion, especially Islam, isn't fading into the background of modern life the way people predicted a couple decades ago. It's growing, evolving, connecting people in ways that politics can't. So when she speaks about it with conviction, she's not just making a political point, she's touching on something deeper, something human. That's what makes it feel so real and so shocking, because it's rare for someone in power to sound that sure, that tuned in about something that transcends the political landscape. And even if people disagree with her or question her motives, the fact that she said it the way she did, with certainty, with confidence, without hesitation, means she struck a chord. It's like the kind of statement that doesn't just fade after a news cycle. It lingers in people's minds, gets replayed in conversations, debated over podcasts, dissected in religious circles, and remembered as one of those moments where politics brushed up against something bigger, something spiritual, something that makes people question where the world's really headed next. Man, the cultural shockwave that came out of Kamala Harris's statement about Islam was unreal. It was one of those moments where you could literally feel the internet stop for a second and go, wait, what did she just say? Because it wasn't just a political comment. It was something layered, spiritual, predictive, maybe even philosophical. And people immediately started dissecting it from every PO. Sybil Angle. You had one half of the crowd saying, wow, this is bold, this is progressive, this is her acknowledging something real about global faith and Islam's growing influence. And then you had the other half going, so hold on, what's the motive here? Is this political strategy? Is it cultural signaling? Is she pandering? It instantly became one of those moments where everyone's personal bias shaped how they heard it. The believers, the skeptics, rise centuries of history, misinterpretation, reverence, and controversy. So when a figure as high profile as Kamala Harris makes a statement that even hints at prediction or belief in Islam's future, it stirs emotions that transcend politics. Suddenly you had Muslims around the world reacting. Some were inspired, saying it felt like validation, like acknowledgement from a powerful voice. Others were cautious, wondering if it was sincere or strategic. Non-Muslims, too, had mixed reactions. Some saw it as a sign of cultural maturity, that faith is being discussed seriously again on big platforms, while others saw it as unnecessary or divisive. That's the fascinating part, man, how one sentence can split the world into 1,000 conversations. You'd have podcasts firing up instantly, YouTube breakdowns popping up overnight, TikTok creators pulling quotes, overlaying dramatic music, and people arguing in comment sections from New York to Jakarta. And you realize it's not even about the statement itself anymore. It's about what it triggered. It became a mirror reflecting where people stand on religion, on politics, on faith in modern society. It exposed how sensitive and powerful the intersection between belief and identity really is. Because think about it. Religion used to be something people talked about in private, something sacred, almost off limits in mainstream discourse. But in that moment, Kamala dragged it into the center of pop culture and politics again, whether she meant to or not. It reminded people that faith isn't gone, it's just been waiting for someone to acknowledge it openly. And that's why it felt like a shockwave, because it challenged people to engage, to care, to feel something about a subject that's bigger than the usual political noise. It was one of those rare cultural moments where logic and emotion collided, where social media arguments weren't just about policy or party, they were about soul and meaning and truth. And you could tell, man, that everyone felt it, even those pretending not to, because love it or hate it, agree or disagree, when someone like Kamala Harris, standing in one of the highest offices in the world, makes a statement that taps into that universal, ancient topic of faith, it shakes people up. It forces the culture to look at itself, to ask, what do we really believe? Where are we headed? That's why it wasn't just news, it was an event, a pulse that spread through communities, media, and minds, leaving everyone to decide for themselves whether it was a slip, a sign, or something way deeper than politics. Man, the media frenzy that kicked off after Kamala Harris made that statement about Islam was absolutely insane. Like, the second those words left her mouth, every major news outlet, podcast, and online commentator went into overdrive trying to figure out what the hell she meant. It was one of those moments where everyone wanted to be the first to decode it. Was it spiritual? Was it political? Was it just symbolic? Or was it something way deeper that people weren't ready to hear yet? You had CNN doing roundtables with experts on religion and geopolitics, Fox News treating it like a political chess move, and social media just exploding with interpretations that went from genius-level analysis to pure conspiracy theory. And that's what's fascinating about moments like this, man. It shows how obsessed the media has become with dissecting not just what's said, but why it was said and how it might affect the next news cycle. People were breaking down her tone, her her facial expressions, even the context of when and where she said it, like she was hiding some grand prophetic message. The podcasts, oh man, they had a field day. You had religious scholars and political commentators sitting next to comedians and ex-military guys, all tossing their takes into the mix, all trying to sound like they had the real port insight. It turned into this cultural circus where every Narati V was competing for clicks. Some people were saying, Sisi's recognizing Islam's growing influence in the modern world. Others were going, nah, this is political signaling. And then there were those saying, maybe she's trying to bridge some global cultural divide. Everyone was grabbing a slice of it, and what's wild is that no one really knew which interpretation was true, and that's exactly what fueled the fire, because ambiguity in today's media world is gold. The less clear a statement is, the more people project onto it, and the longer it stays relevant. And when a person of Kamala's stature makes a statement that walks that line between political speech and spiritual commentary, it's irresistible to the news machine. They can't ignore it. Every editor sees a headline, every producer sees a segment, every podcast host sees a viral clip waiting to happen. And that's exactly what it became, this digital hurricane of opinions. You'd scroll through YouTube, and every thumbnail add her face with the same quote in bold letters. Kamala Harris predicts the future of Islam. The question mark is always the move, man, because it keeps people watching. But here's the thing. Beyond the noise, what you start to realize is that the frenzy itself says more about us than about her statement. It shows how hungry people are for something meaningful, something that feels like it taps into the spiritual or moral pulse of the world, even if it's coming from a political mouthpiece. It shows how the lines between faith, politics, and entertainment have completely blurred. You had Muslim commentators breaking down the historical and theological implications of her words, atheists mocking the coverage, and middle-of-the-road thinkers just sitting there going, why is this even news? But that's the cycle. Once the spark hits, the media amplifies it until everyone's exhausted. And by the time the real meaning gets buried under interpretations, the public's already moved on to next outrage. Still, this one hit different because it reminded everyone that religion, especially Islam, isn't just some background subject anymore. It's still a global force that demands attention. And when someone with real political power speaks on it, the media treats it like a seismic event. It's like the moment she said those words, 1,000 cameras turned and 1,000,000 narratives were born overnight. That's what happens when politics and belief collide in a world that thrives on hot takes. It doesn't matter what she meant. What matters is that everyone thinks they know, and that's enough to keep the conversation burning for weeks. You gotta understand, man, when it comes to religion, especially Islam, it's not just another topic you can toss around in political conversation without some kind of reaction. Islam is deeply sacred to over 1 billion people. It's not just a belief system, it's a way of life, it's identity, it's history, it's community, it's something that shapes the rhythm of people's everyday existence. So when a political figure like Kamala Harris makes a comment about it, even if she doesn't mean it in a controversial way, it immediately carries emotional and cultural weight. People listen differently because religion isn't like policy, it's personal. You can debate taxes or foreign affairs all day, but the moment you touch on faith, it hits hearts, not just minds. And with Islam in particular, there's this layer of complexity because it's a religion that's been both respected and misunderstood globally. And everyone seems to have an opinion about it. So a statement about Islam from someone in power doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It ripples through communities, through news cycles, through online debates, and people start measuring whether it was genuine, respectful, or political. Some take it as validation, others as intrusion, and that's the thing. It's emotional territory. Words about Islam carry responsibility because they interact with something sacred, something that survived centuries of struggle, devotion, and misrepresentation. And that's why even one comment can trigger cultural consequences that go way beyond what the speaker intended. It's not cancel culture or outrage culture, man. It's reverence. When you talk about someone's faith, especially one as deeply rooted as Islam, you're not just talking about religion. You're talking about people's souls, and that always demands care. It's wild when you think about it, man, because historically in American politics, religion is one of those minefields everyone tries to tiptoe around. Politicians will talk about faith in broad, safe strokes, and God bless America when we're all children of God. Stuff that sounds good, but doesn't really commit to anything deep or specific. That's because the second you get too detailed or too predictive about religion, you risk alienating someone. America's this melting pot of beliefs, right? You've got Christians, Muslims, Jews, atheists, agnostics, spiritual seekers, and they all vote. So politicians learn early that if you start making bold statements about any one faith, especially something like Islam, which already sits in a complex place in American public consciousness, the backlash can come hard and fast. That's why Kamala Harris's comment hit like a shockwave. It went against decades of political conditioning. She wasn't just giving a respectful nod. She made a prediction, like she was seeing something coming in the future of Islam's global role. And that's not something you normally hear from the top of the political hierarchy. In a culture where every word is dissected for hidden meaning, she stepped right into territory most leaders avoid, and that's what made it bold as hell. It's not even about agreeing with her or not. It's about the fact that she said it at all, knowing how easily it could blow up. That's gutsy, man, because in a world where political language is usually sterilese, filtered through handlers and PR teams, that kind of statement feels raw, unpredictable, and almost human. It breaks the pattern, and that's why people noticed, debated, and freaked out over it. It's crazy how fast things can spread in the age of the internet, man. One statement, one clip, and suddenly millions of people are talking, arguing, and digging into stuff they never cared about before. That's exactly what happened after Kamala Harris made that prediction about Islam. It wasn't just another political comment. It was something that hit people on a deeper level because it touched faith, identity, and global influence all at once. You could literally feel the internet split into different camps overnight. Some folks were like, wait, what does she mean by that? Others took it as a sign of respect, while a lot of people got defensive or skeptical. And here's the interesting part. People actually started researching. You saw spikes in Google searches, YouTube videos breaking down what Islam is really about, podcasts diving into cultural discussions, even casual social media users sharing quotes from the Quran trying to understand the context. It's like her one bold statement cracked open a door that had been shut for a long time. Of course, with curiosity comes controversy, because not everyone wants to see religion enter political conversation, especially when it's Islam. Some people started reading it as a political move. Others saw it as a genuine reflection of shifting global awareness, and that tension fueled the entire storm. But at the same time, you could sense this weird kind of awakening, like a massive audience realizing how little they actually knew, how much of what they believed was just filtered through headlines and bias. That's the power of words, man. One high-profile person says something unexpected, and it forces millions to confront ideas they've either ignored or misunderstood for years. Whether you agreed with her or not, you avoid the conversation. And that's the real impact. It made people think, argue, learn, and reflect. That's rare in today's echo chamber world. It's wild when you think about the psychological ripple effect something like that can have, man, because when a major political figure says something bold about Islam, it's not just about the words themselves. It's about how those words land with millions of people who hear them through the lens of their own experience. For Muslims, it can feel like this rare moment of acknowledgement, like someone in power finally recognizing the scale, influence, and depth of their faith on a global level, especially in a time when Islam is so often misunderstood or misrepresented in the media. That kind of recognition hits deep. It can feel validating, empowering even, like a breath of fresh air after years of being put under a microscope for all the wrong reasons. But on the flip side, it can also trigger caution, maybe even suspicion, because Political statements are never just spiritual. There's always that question of intent. Is this genuine respect, or is it being used to make a point, to sway a narrative? And for non-Muslims, it sparks a completely different kind of reaction. Curiosity mixed with discomfort, because suddenly Islam isn't just something happening over there or tied to global headlines. It's being talked about by someone from their own government as a major force shaping the future. That makes people pause. It challenges preconceptions, and sometimes it even stirs fear because it disrupts that mental status quo they've held for years. And that's what's so fascinating. One sentence can completely reframe how two massive groups of people perceive each other, how they interpret faith, politics, and power. It's not just a comment. It's a psychological domino effect that makes people reevaluate their beliefs, their understanding, and where they fit in this huge interconnected story of religion and modern evilization. You know what's crazy about that kind of statement? It might not even be about religion in the way people first think, man. Like when someone like Kamala Harris says something bold about Islam, a lot of folks instantly go, "Oh, she's talking faith. She's talking spirituality." But maybe it's way bigger than that. Maybe it's about this global shift we're watching unfold, the kind that's not just political or cultural, but human. Think about it. The world's kind of in this weird phase where people are either completely losing touch with belief systems or desperately searching for something to believe in again. And when someone in power talks about Islam, not in a divisive, fearful way, but in a predictive, forward-looking sense, it sends this signal. Maybe what she's really pointing at is how faith-based identity, community, and discipline are rising again while so many societies are crumbling under chaos, disconnection, and moral fatigue. It could also be her way of acknowledging how global power dynamics are changing. Countries and communities rooted in strong cultural and religious unity are starting to stand taller, starting to shape world conversations. So the prediction might not be Islam's taking over spiritually, but rather, and the world's waking up to the fact that faith, any faith, but especially one so globally connected, can't be ignored as a unifying or stabilizing force. That's the broader message, man. It's like she's saying, whether you agree or not, this is where the human tide is moving, toward meaning, toward discipline, towards something that connects people beyond politics and hashtags. It's not even necessarily a pro or anti-statement. It's more like an observation of the era we're walking into, where the strength of community, belief, and moral grounding might actually become the real superpower. What's wild about this whole thing is that it didn't just blow up for a few hours on Twitter and disappear like most viral moments. It stuck. It became this huge cultural talking point that crossed over from politics into religion, philosophy, even into conversations about what people actually believe in today. And that's what's fascinating. Man, we live in this hyper-modern, super-connected world where faith and identity have kind of blended into these personal brands, right? People talk about what they believe almost like they're choosing a playlist. So when someone with that level of political power drops a bold statement about Islam, it instantly forces everyone to take a stance, or at least think about where they stand. You had religious leaders dissecting her words, political analysts arguing over intent, and regular folks online just trying to figure out if she meant it spiritually, socially, or strategically. And it started this ripple effect, where the conversation wasn't even just about Islam anymore. It was about belief as a whole, how modern society interacts with it, how we've kind of replaced deep purpose with politics and social media trends. It made people confront this uncomfortable truth that, despite all our tech and progress, humans are still wired to look for something bigger, some kind of structure or meaning. And that's why the discussion caught fire, because it tapped into that collective unease we all feel about where we're headed as a culture. Everyone projected their own fears and hopes onto it. Muslims saw representation, skeptics saw manipulation, and the rest saw a rare moment when politics and spirituality collided in a way that couldn't be ignored. It became less about what she said and more about why it hit so hard. And that's the real story. That hunger for meaning in a time when everything feels hollow. That search for identity when every label feels temporary.